In the heart of the mighty Persian Empire, under the rule of the formidable King Xerxes, a story of courage, faith, and destiny unfolds. Amidst unparalleled opulence and intrigue, one woman's quiet strength would change the fate of an entire people. From a humble orphan to the Queen of Persia, Esther's rise would lead to a daring stand against tyranny, a moment where courage met destiny and faith defied the odds. The Persian Empire, under King Xerxes, was the most powerful kingdom of its time, stretching from Kush across a vast expanse of territories. Its capital city, Susa, was a center of magnificence and culture. King Xerxes was a ruler who loved to display his wealth and power, and one of his most remarkable acts was a grand celebration held in the third year of his reign. The banquet lasted 180 days, with all the empire's nobles, officials, and military leaders invited to partake in this opulence. The gardens of the palace were lavishly decorated with golden couches, silver furnishings, marble pillars, and fine linen hangings. At the heart of the celebration was the king himself, generously offering wine from golden goblets, each unique and a seemingly endless array of food and entertainment. This display was not merely a show of wealth, but a political move to solidify loyalty among his subjects. As the final days of the banquet approached, the king, emboldened by wine, made a decision that would change the course of his reign. Xerxes commanded his queen, Vashti, to appear before his guests, adorned in her royal crown, so they might gaze upon her beauty. To everyone's astonishment, Vashti refused. Her defiance was a direct affront to the king's authority and an act of rebellion that could not be ignored. Humiliated and angered, Xerxes sought the counsel of his advisors. They warned him that Vashti's actions could inspire other women to defy their husbands, leading to widespread disorder. To protect his rule and maintain order, Xerxes decreed Vashti's removal as queen. Her banishment sent a clear message to the empire. The king's word was absolute. However, this left Xerxes without a queen, and soon his advisors proposed a solution: to hold a kingdom-wide search for a new one. This decree reverberated through the empire, sending waves of anticipation and anxiety among its subjects. The search was not just for beauty, but for someone who could embody grace, wisdom, and loyalty to the crown. In distant towns and villages, families debated whether to send their daughters, weighing the risks and rewards of palace life. The call for a new queen underscored the sheer magnitude of Xerxes' power, a reminder of how the fate of individuals often rested in the hands of rulers. The search for a new queen began with an edict sent across the empire. Officials were instructed to gather the most beautiful young women and bring them to Susa. These women would be placed in the royal harem and prepared for an entire year before being presented to the king. Among them was a young Jewish woman named Esther. Esther's life had been shaped by adversity. Orphaned as a child, she was raised by her cousin Mordecai, a man of deep faith and wisdom who worked near the palace gates. Despite her humble upbringing, Esther possessed extraordinary beauty and grace. When she was taken to the palace, Mordecai urged her to keep her Jewish identity a secret, knowing the potential dangers of revealing it in a foreign court. In the palace, Esther came under the care of Haggai, the eunuch responsible for the harem. Unlike the other women, who sought to outshine one another with requests for extravagant gifts and adornments, Esther displayed humility and wisdom, asking only for what Haggai recommended. Her demeanor quickly earned his favor, and he ensured she received the finest accommodations, cosmetics, and food. After a year of beauty treatments, Esther was brought before King Xerxes. Her quiet confidence and striking beauty captivated him, and he placed the royal crown on her head, declaring her the new queen of Persia. To celebrate, the king held a grand banquet in her honor and declared a holiday throughout the empire. Esther's rise to the throne marked the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one that would not only test her courage, but also define her legacy. While Esther settled into her new life as queen, Mordecai remained at the palace gates, watching over her from a distance. His vigilance proved invaluable when he overheard a plot by two royal guards, Bigthana and Teresh, to assassinate King Xerxes. Mordecai immediately reported the conspiracy to Esther, who relayed the information to the king, crediting Mordecai for his loyalty. The guards were executed, and the incident was recorded in the royal chronicles, though Mordecai received no reward. During this time, Haman, an ambitious and arrogant man, rose to prominence in Xerxes' court. Appointed as the king's chief advisor, Haman was granted authority second only to Xerxes himself. His power was immense, and his pride was boundless. He demanded that all the king's servants bow before him as a sign of respect. Mordecai, however, refused. His loyalty was to the Most High Yah, and he would not bow to any man. Haman was enraged by Mordecai's defiance. His anger grew into hatred, not only for Mordecai but for all Jews in the empire. Consumed by his desire for revenge, Haman devised a plan to destroy them. He approached King Xerxes, presenting the Jews as a rebellious and dangerous people who followed their own laws and customs, disregarding the king's authority. He offered 10,000 talents of silver to the royal treasury in exchange for permission to annihilate them. Trusting Haman, Xerxes agreed. Letters were sent throughout the empire, decreeing that on a specific day, chosen by casting lots or Purim, all Jews, men, women, and children, were to be killed. The announcement plunged the Jewish people into despair. The news of the decree reached Mordecai, who tore his clothes, donned sackcloth, and wept openly in the streets of Susa. He sent a message to Esther, urging her to plead with the king on behalf of her people. However, Esther hesitated. Approaching the king uninvited was forbidden under Persian law, punishable by death unless the king extended his golden scepter. Mordecai's response was both a challenge and a reminder of her purpose.
Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?
Moved by Mordecai's words, Esther resolved to act. She instructed Mordecai to gather all the Jews in Susa to fast, not eating or drinking anything, and pray for 3 days and nights. She and her attendants would do the same. When this is done, she declared,
I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish.
On the third day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the palace. When King Xerxes saw her, he was pleased and extended his golden scepter, allowing her to speak. Esther invited the king and Haman to a banquet she had prepared, setting the stage for her boldest move yet. After gaining King Xerxes' favor by approaching him uninvited, Queen Esther extended her invitation to a private banquet.
If it pleases the king,
She said,
let the king and Haman come today to a banquet I have prepared for him.
Xerxes immediately accepted, summoning Haman to join him. The banquet was a luxurious affair filled with fine wine, rich food, and the warmth of Esther's hospitality. During the feast, Xerxes turned to Esther and asked, Now what is your petition? It will be given to you. And what is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted. Esther, however, did not immediately reveal her true request. Instead, she invited Xerxes and Haman to a second banquet the following day. If the king regards me with favor, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition, let the king and Haman come tomorrow to the banquet I will prepare for them. Then I will answer the king's question. Haman left the palace that evening feeling elated. Not only had he dined with the king and queen, but he was also invited to another exclusive banquet. His pride swelled as he recounted his favor with Xerxes and Esther to his wife, Zeresh, and his friends. Yet, even in his triumph, his hatred for Mordecai burned deeply. As long as Mordecai sat unbowed at the king's gate, Haman could find no satisfaction in his success. Even as Haman plotted Mordecai's downfall, the air in the palace corridors grew heavy with tension. Rumors of his towering arrogance and unchecked power spread among the court officials. Many feared the volatile nature of his wrath, yet none dared to speak against him. Unbeknownst to Haman, his actions were laying the groundwork for his eventual undoing, as the Most High had plans to turn the tide in favor of the oppressed. At his wife's suggestion, Haman ordered the construction of a massive pole, 50 cubits high, intending to ask the king the next morning for Mordecai to be executed upon it. With his plan in place, Haman's mood lifted, and he prepared for the banquet. That night, King Xerxes found himself unable to sleep. Seeking distraction, he ordered the royal chronicles, the record of his reign, to be read to him. As the accounts were read aloud, Xerxes was reminded of the assassination plot that Mordecai had foiled. "What honor and recognition has Mordecai received for this?" the king asked. "Nothing has been done for him," the attendants replied. Determined to rectify this oversight, Xerxes sought immediate advice. At that moment, Haman entered the palace court, intending to ask for Mordecai's execution. And unaware of Haman's intentions, Xerxes summoned him and asked, what should be done for the man the king delights to honor? Believing the honor was meant for himself, Haman envisioned a grand gesture.
"For the man the king delights to honor, let a royal robe the king has worn and a horse the king has ridden, one with a royal crest on its head, be brought. Then let the robe and horse be entrusted to one of the king's most noble princes. Let them robe the man the king delights to honor and lead him on the horse through the city streets, proclaiming before him, 'This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor.'"
Xerxes was pleased. "Go at once," he commanded. "Do just as you have suggested for Mordecai the Jew, who sits at the king's gate. Do not neglect anything you have recommended." As Haman led Mordecai through the streets of Susa, his heart burned with humiliation. The sight of the crowd cheering Mordecai filled him with dread, for it was not just a moment of honor for Mordecai, but a symbolic victory for the Jewish people. The whispers among the onlookers hinted at a shift in favor of Mordecai, a man whose humility contrasted sharply with Haman's overbearing pride. This act of forced homage planted the seeds of doubt in Haman's allies, signaling a shift in the power dynamics within the empire. Mordecai returned to the king's gate, but Haman rushed home in grief, covering his face in shame. Zeresh and his friends warned him, "Since Mordecai, before whom your downfall has started, is of Jewish origin, you cannot stand against him. You will surely come to ruin." The following day, Haman returned to the palace for Esther's second banquet. As the king, Haman, and Esther dined, Xerxes once again turned to his queen. "What is your petition? It will be given to you. And what is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted." Esther took a deep breath, her moment of truth at hand.
If I have found favor with you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, grant me my life. This is my petition. And spare my people. This is my request. For I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. If we had merely been sold as slaves, I would have kept quiet, because no such distress would justify disturbing the king.
Xerxes, stunned, asked, "Who is he? Where is the man who has dared to do such a thing?" Esther pointed directly at Haman, an adversary and enemy, this vile Haman. Haman turned pale with terror. Xerxes, consumed with rage, left the banquet hall and went into the palace garden. Haman, realizing his fate was sealed, threw himself at Esther's feet, begging for his life. When Xerxes returned and saw Haman falling onto Esther's couch, he misinterpreted the scene. "Will he even molest the queen while she's with me in the house?" the king roared. As soon as the words left the king's mouth, Haman's face was covered. Harbona, one of the king's eunuchs, spoke up. "A pole reaching to a height of 50 cubits stands by Haman's house. He had it set up for Mordecai, who spoke up to help the king. Xerxes ordered, 'Impale him on it.' Haman was executed on the very pole he had prepared for Mordecai, and the king's rage subsided. That same day, Xerxes bestowed Haman's estate upon Queen Esther. Mordecai was summoned to the king's presence, and Esther revealed their familial connection. Xerxes handed Mordecai the signet ring that had once belonged to Haman, giving him authority over the estate. However, the decree to annihilate the Jews could not be revoked, as Persian law was irrevocable. To counteract it, Xerxes issued a new decree, granting the Jews the right to assemble, defend themselves, and destroy their enemies on the appointed day. Letters were sent throughout the empire, ensuring that the Jews were prepared. When the day arrived, the Jews triumphed over their enemies. In Susa alone, hundreds of their adversaries were slain. Mordecai's rise to prominence was celebrated across the empire, and the Jews rejoiced in their deliverance. To commemorate this miraculous turn of events, Mordecai and Esther established the festival of Purim, named after the lots, Purim, Haman had cast to determine the date of their destruction. It became a time of feasting, gift-giving, and remembrance, celebrated annually by Jews around the world. The story of Purim is not just a tale of deliverance, but a testament to the resilience of faith in the face of adversity. Esther's journey from an orphan to a queen, and finally a savior of her people, reflects the divine orchestration of events that seem impossible at first glance. Her courage inspires countless generations to stand firm in their beliefs, knowing that even in the darkest hours, hope and justice can prevail. Queen Esther's story is a timeless story of courage, faith, and destiny. Her bravery saved her people, and the festival of Purim continues to honor her legacy, reminding us of the power of standing up for what is right and trusting in the Most High. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Stay tuned for more inspiring biblical stories.